what's up, y'all? It's MMA Analyst here to do my preview, my predictions video for Ultimate Fight Night, Marquardt versus Palhares. Let's get right down to it. It's a little bit late, but, like I said before, better late than never. And by before, I mean in the past, in other videos where I was late, but not never. Rousimar Palhares versus Nate the Great Marquardt. Nate Marquardt coming off his loss to Chael Sonnen in a fight where, he basically got ran through for 2 rounds, and then at the end of the third round, with 2 minutes left, really turned it up, beat the F out of Chael Sonnen, but it wasn't enough. Before that, he had a win over Maia, like a 20-second knockout. Win over Wilson Gouveia, Martin Kampmann, lost to Thales Latis, win over Jeremy Horn, and then there's his title shot back in 2007 against Anderson Silva. Nate Marquardt's basically a guy really good on the ground, definitely improved stand-up. His wrestling was his main issue against Chael Sonnen. His takedown defense looked really, really questionable. And basically, that's the kind of the hope that Rousimar Palhares has in this fight, is that he can get Nate Marquardt taken to the ground. Rousimar Palhares coming off of his knee shattering, heel twisting, nasty heel hook over Thomas Dural, where basically he held that tap. A lot of people think a little too long. Dural was actually hospitalized, had to get surgery. He was out, and he's actually making his return on the same card as Palhares. Before that, he had another heel hook over Lucio Linares and Jeremy Horn victory before that. And then his loss to Dan Henderson was his only loss in the UFC. And before that, he had a very nice, pretty simple win over Ivan Salivary. Basically, Rousimar Palhares is nasty. With the leg locks. He's very strong. He's very stocky. He's just like this little thick troll that can rip your legs off. I don't know if that is in any movies, but that sounds like a horror movie to me, and definitely anybody who's fighting Palhares. The way I see it is in mixed martial arts, when you fight somebody, you have to watch out for yourself. You're thinking, yeah, I don't want to get beat up. I don't want to get knocked out. I don't want to lose. There's certain things I don't want to happen, but you don't really fear for your ability to fight for the next year. You just think, I'll win or I'll lose, but either or, I'm going to be okay to walk home. And Rousimar Palhares, one of the few guys where if he beats you, there's a very high chance that you might be in a wheelchair for 3 months, on crutches for 2 other months, rehabilitating your leg, making your return a year from, the time that you fought Palhares. It's just nasty. But in this situation, he's going to have to basically get the takedown, secure the takedown, hold Nate Marquardt down, try and move, maybe, drop back for an ankle lock or a heel hook, or submit him and whatnot. And obviously Nate Marquardt knows this, especially with his stand-up being very much improved. It's very hard to pick somebody who has, one move. And that's what Rousimar Palhares is coming into this fight with. He's got a lot of things that lead up to that one move, the strength, the power, but he's got cardio issues. So when it really comes down to who's got this fight, I'm going to have to go with Nate Marquardt, simply because I think he'll be able to stuff takedowns. I think he'll have the better cardio. I think he obviously has the better hands. And in the end, all he has to do is not get his leg ripped off. And yes, that's not the easiest thing to do against somebody like Palhares, but I think it's something he'll be able to do. Either a decision for Marquardt or a 3rd round TKO. Next, Efrain Escudero. He'll be fighting Charles Oliveira. Escudero is coming off a win over Dan Lozon. Before that, he got smashed by Evan Dunham and then would not tap to an armbar. Eventually had to tap. but just got ran through. But, Evan Dunham's probably, one of the future champs or at least contenders of the UFC lightweight division. He had a win over Cole Miller prior to that, and then a pretty dominating win over Felipe Nover in the Ultimate Fighter 8 finale. Efren Escudero, he's got pretty good hands. His wrestling's pretty half decent. His grappling's pretty good. I mean, overall, he's a well-rounded fighter who's improving and who is also young, and that's the good thing. Against a top competitor, against a top 10 guy, against somebody like Evan Dunham, he needs some more time. But for the potential up next, he's on that list. However, he'll be facing a much less known Charles Oliveira. 13 wins, no losses. He came into the UFC, fought Darren Elkins, looked very impressive against him, got the submission of the night. Before that, he basically fought every fight in Japan, in Brazil, defeating everybody by, submissions, anaconda choke, rear naked choke, triangle, TKOs. So, he's definitely a prospect on the level of, let's get him to the UFC and see what he can do. His whole thing will be trying to get this fight to the ground and keep the fight on the ground and control using his jiu-jitsu. And, I actually think he's going to be able to pull this fight off. I think he's going to be able to get Efren Escudero to the ground over and over again. This is kind of like an underdog pick. But I actually think Charles Oliveira is going to pull this off. I don't know how beautiful it's going to be. I think if he can't finish Efren Escudero, then I think it will just be him continuously moving, passing the guard, and then maybe Escudero can get his guard back, and then he passes to half for momentarily, and then Escudero gets the guard back, and it's just kind of a guy trying to move repeatedly on top and tiring somebody out, and doing that for potentially for 15 minutes. But I'm picking Oliveira in that fight. Next fight, Jim Miller versus Gleison Tibau. Gleison Tibau is back. He's back, as the biggest lightweight in the world, just massive. He's coming off of his win over Cal Uno. It's just completely unfair, just having a big-ass dude like Gleison Tibau against just a small, little Cal Uno. Before that, he had a win over Josh Neer. And then we have his issues with, Melvin Gillard, where a lot of people think he actually won the fight, but the issue with Gleison Tibau is that he's real big and really strong, but gasses. He just gasses. He had his win over Jeremy Stevens and Rich Clementi, but then he had a loss to Joe Steven, a loss to Tyson Griffin, and really it always comes down to Tibau being able to get these big, nasty takedowns, these powerful, strong takedowns, and kind of controlling the first round, but then being tired in the second, losing the second, and then eventually losing the fight. That's what happens when he fights tough guys who have cardio, who are able to keep going and maybe stuff a few takedowns and make them fight for the takedowns. And that's what I think Jim Miller represents in this fight. He's a good wrestler. 17 wins, 2 losses. Solid win over Mark Bocheck. Solid win over Dwayne Bang Ludwig, Mac Danzig, Steve Lopez. A win is a win. And, his only loss recently, he had a loss to Gray Maynard. And before that, he had a loss to Frank Edgar. So, those are the two, that's the next title fight right there at the lightweight. So he's a solid fighter. He's not going to gas. At least I don't believe he will. He's really good in wrestling. I think he's going to make Gleison Tibau fight for every last little inch. And I think when it comes down to it, he's going to be the one that's more fresh going into the second round and into the third round. And I just see Miller winning that fight by decision. Another decision? Ooh. All right, Ross Pearson versus Cole Miller. Ross Pearson, 11 wins, 3 losses. He was on Ultimate Fighter Season 9, and he's, European, and, he's from the UK, and, his wrestling's not supposed to be all that great, and his hands looked half decent when he was on the show, and then it was like, okay, well, he made it to the finals, and he'll fight Andre Winner, and he'll probably lose to Andre Winner, and then he beat Andre Winner decisively. And then he went on to fight Aaron Riley, and it's like, yeah, he'll probably lose to Aaron Riley. Aaron Riley's a veteran. He's scrappy. He's all these things. And then he smashes Aaron Riley. And his stand-up, it looked like he took steroids for stand-up. Like, he just went, and, like, all of his stuff was together. His tie was looking good. He was crazy in the clinch. And he just looked like a beast. And then he went out there against Dennis Seaver and did the exact same thing. Ross Pearson's stand-up is looking really good. His takedown defense has actually been looking solid as well. And he'll be facing Cole Miller. Cole Miller, 16 wins, 4 losses. He actually has the loss to Escudero, in which I believe he didn't really implement a good game plan. He let Escudero get in close. He let him get in tight. And he ended up getting knocked out. He has a win over Judy Browning, which obviously we know now means absolutely nothing. Damn, hit the mic. He has a solid win over Dan Lozon. Definitely a solid win. And then a win over George Gurgel, which, I don't know, George Gurgel will find a way to lose to anybody. But it's still a good win. He also beat Andy Wang, which means he's forever, I'll forever be a fan of his. Really good on the ground. He's got decent stand-up. He's an exciting fighter. But in this fight here, I'm going to have to go with Ross Pearson. I mean, if Cole Miller gets the fight to the ground and he's able to keep it on the ground, well, then Cole Miller is most likely going to be able to control and maybe even submit Ross Pearson. However, I think Ross Pearson, unless, I think he's getting better. I think he's improving. I think he'll be able to go out there. I think he'll be able to keep the distance, use superior striking, stuff takedowns when necessary. And I've got Ross Pearson. Probably this could be fight of the night again. And I see him keeping the fight on the feet and just, tooling Cole Miller with his hands and knees and elbows and whatnot in the clinch. Undercard, props to Eve Edwards getting back to the UFC fighting John the Gun Gunderson? That should be his name. Anyways, Gunderson coming off a good win over Marquardt. I'm just going to, this is undercard, so I'm just going to make a pick here. I'm going to have to go with Gunderson over Edwards. Heyman over Cal Kingsbury. Thomas Dural, like I said, making his return against David Branch. I'm going to pick Dural. Rich Antonio versus Rafael Natal. I'm picking Natal. I'm picking Anthony Waldberger over David Mitchell. And Brian Foster against Forrest Petz. I think I'm going to have to go with Forrest Petz on this one. No, I'm going to go with Brian Foster. So, yeah, there you go. Free mixed martial arts Wednesday night. Ultimate Fighter season 13 starts. It's just going to be a whole lot of trash talk. A whole lot of, what's his name? Josh Koscheck going berserk. Talking all types of junk about GSP and GSP not ever responding. So, hopefully it can somehow be entertaining. I don't know. But what I do know is I'll be watching every damn week because there's nothing better on a Wednesday night. Except for tomorrow. Big Brother finale's on. MMA, y'all. It's important. Peace.